Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to connect the dots between massive global energy shocks and your personal finances in 2026. You know, it's pretty fascinating and honestly a little intimidating to see just how fast a headline from across the world can end up directly impacting your monthly budget.
Okay, so here's our roadmap. We're going to filter all the way down from international shipping bottlenecks to domestic fuel prices, straight into the everyday reality of managing a fixed-income retirement. Let's get right into it.
We'll kick things off right at the top, looking at the global energy shock.
Now, the catalyst for this entire economic chain reaction really comes down to just one single staggering number: 20%. That 20%, that represents the massive chunk of the entire global oil supply that is currently completely paralyzed by the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. Because of the ongoing strikes and hostilities over there, this absolutely crucial passage, which usually handles nearly 20 million barrels a day, has been drastically curtailed. And, as you might expect, this choke points closure has driven international benchmark Brent crude above $100 a barrel, sparking a worldwide energy crisis pretty much overnight.
When you have a bottleneck that massive, you get instant geographical panic. Just think about where that constrained oil usually flows. China, for instance, relies heavily on this specific route, pulling in about 1.4 million barrels a day. That is a whopping 80% of all Iranian crude exports going to just one place.
But here's the fascinating part. The global fallout is wildly uneven. It depends almost entirely on a region's existing energy infrastructure. China's incredibly robust electric vehicle infrastructure is acting as a major buffer against the specific shock, even with the political risks they face. Europe, on the other hand, they are facing a severe supply crisis. Fuel and mining products accounted for over 75% of EU imports from the Gulf, meaning they are absolutely taking the brunt of this disruption.
So let's zoom in a bit and see how this global shock turns into domestic pain here at the pump.
Since the war began, gasoline is up 27%. But notice that the shortage is hitting diesel much harder, surging 34%. Why the difference? Well, largely because cold weather heating oil consumption, which uses essentially the exact same ultra-low sulfur base, already had supplies running remarkably low before this conflict even started. It was a perfect storm.
And the regional sting is just incredibly sharp right now. While regular gas is averaging about $4.10 nationally, out on the West Coast, it is hitting $5.38.8. But the real five-alarm crisis is national diesel sitting at $5.50 a gallon. That is a massive 54.2% year-over-year spike, and it's topping $5 for the first time since the Russia-Ukraine energy crisis back in 2022.
Now, Diane Swonk, the chief economist at KPMG, really hit the nail on the head here. The crucial point is that this isn't just about the cost of filling up your car. Because trucks, freight trains, and agricultural equipment all run on diesel, this energy shock acts as a massive inflation multiplier for almost everything we buy. It directly hits us right in the grocery store aisles.
To fight these surging prices, the U.S. government has had to take some pretty drastic domestic action. Which brings us to the Strategic Petroleum Reserve.
Right now, the reserve has plummeted to 365 million barrels. If we look back at the timeline, the reserve was heavily drained back in 2022 during the Ukraine war under President Biden, which, as you might remember, drew some really sharp criticism from Donald Trump in 2024. Now, with the Iran conflict in early 2026, another 50 million barrels have been drained in just 3 months. This has pushed the reserve down to a 2-year low, and it's sparking an intense partisan debate over our actual energy security.
And this leads us to the absolute vital question that links these geopolitical shocks straight to everyday American wallets. If diesel is driving up the cost of everyday goods, how on earth do you survive if your income literally doesn't change?
Let's zoom all the way down into the micro level, specifically looking at the 2026 Social Security COLA. For 2026, the Social Security Administration rolled out a 2.8% cost of living adjustment, or COLA. This brings the average retired worker's benefit to $2,081.16 a month, and a married couple's combined average to $3,208 a month. Now, while this 2.8% adjustment is supposed to help keep pace with living costs, we really have to look at the bigger picture here.
This is where the squeeze actually happens. When you juxtapose these two realities side by side, the incredible pressure on folks relying strictly on a fixed income becomes instantly visible. On one hand, you have a 54.2% year-over-year spike in the fuel that transports literally all of our goods. On the other hand,
A meager 2.8% bump in monthly income. It is the perfect illustration of a macro-to-micro squeeze.
So, what can we actually do about this? Let's move into our final section and talk about maximizing those retirement benefits to weather the storm.
Your claiming age practically dictates your financial armor. If you claim at the earliest age, which is 62, your maximum possible benefit is capped at $2,969. Wait until full retirement age at 67, and it jumps to $4,152. But if you can hold off until age 70, you get an 8% boost for every single year you wait past your full retirement age. That brings the absolute maximum monthly payout to a very substantial $5,181.
But you knew there was a catch, right? To actually secure that absolute maximum benefit of $5,181, you have to hit 3 incredibly difficult lifetime milestones. First, you must log at least 35 years of steady contributions. Second, you must earn at or above the annual taxable maximum for those 35 years, which in 2026 sits at a steep $184,500. And finally, you have to have the financial flexibility to delay claiming until age 70. Very, very few people hit all 3 of those marks.
I really hope this explainer gave you a clear, structured look at just how deeply connected our world is today. From a choke point in the Strait of Hormuz to the grocery store aisle, right down to your monthly Social Security check, it is all one continuous chain reaction. Which leaves us with a pretty heavy question. As these shocks keep coming, how can you best prepare your own finances for the next ripple effect? Thanks so much for learning with me today. See you next time.